powerful mechanisms the oligarchs are using against us is cognitive dissonance. Now, what cognitive dissonance is taking one's long-held beliefs and giving them truthful information that goes against those long-held beliefs or conditioned responses. So you either reject or, the actual definition is as follows. Dissonance is aroused when people are confronted with information that is inconsistent with their beliefs. If the dissonance is not reduced by changing one's belief, the dissonance can result in restoring consonance through misperception, rejection, or refutation of the information. So what you'll do is, since you don't want to deal with the horrible truth, like 9/11 was clearly an inside job, and there's just so many glaring problems, but cognitive dissonance, you don't want to look at the reality. I mean, that they found pristine passports of the hijackers in the rubble when people were decimated. My own cousin had to be identified by DNA, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, Dan, not far from here, a passerby found the passport of one of the hijackers. Evidence this disaster scene is also a crime scene.
And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives had anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak.
I grabbed my binoculars and I could see the towers from my window. And this is where I'm looking. And all of a sudden, down there, I see this van parked. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. And I could see that they were like happy. They didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
Now, the 5 Israelis were held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn for overstaying their tourist visas and working in the United States illegally. Supposedly, there was an FBI investigation that, quote-unquote, cleared them of any involvement in the 9/11 attacks, but they certainly were there to document the event. 2 weeks after their arrest, an immigration judge ordered them to be deported. Sources told ABC News that the FBI and CIA officials in Washington had put a hold on the case. Eventually, The Forward, a respected Jewish newspaper in New York, reported the FBI concluded that 2 of the men were indeed Israeli intelligence operatives. According to ABC News, Israeli and U.S. government officials worked out a deal, and after 71 days, the 5 Israelis were taken out of jail, put on a plane, and deported back home.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
Now, of course, there have been many retractions to this story. In fact, Bernard Kerik, New York City Police Commissioner, his confirmation of this is well on record. They certainly did retract this information. Quote, and I quote Bernard Kerik, "I just got a confirmation from the Chief of Detectives. He's reached out to the FBI. They have confirmed that someone has been stopped in New Jersey, 3 men in a van. However, there was no explosives in the van, all right? They're being held for questioning." First, let's take a look at John Miller. For more than 25 years, he has been the spokesperson for the FBI, correspondent, the go-to guy. Notice all of these History Channel shows and all of the television shows and all of the news, of course, have their go-to people. They're always the same people. They're always the same people. Keep that in mind. Take note of it. And it's not because it's their career. It's because they have a purpose. John Miller is excellent. He covered up the truth about the Oklahoma City bombing. He's covered up 9/11, covered up the first World Trade Center attack in 1993. And again, gives this false image that everyone accepts, and that's why the cognitive dissonance is so hard to accept. It's so hard to accept the truth, is that the FBI give people bombs to blow things up. They did that in 1993 with the World Trade Center. They've done it with others. These bombers, they give them the bombs, then they bust them. It's a sting operation, they call it. Which is not helping the situation at all. But it certainly is good for the propaganda, and it's good for the social control. Now, let's take a look at Bernie Kerik. Bernie Kerik was offered the job to be the head of Homeland Security, the first head of the Homeland Security. But, of course, he's a criminal. He's a felon. Bernie Kerik is a carbon copy example of your typical New World Order elitist sellout to the people for the money. So he's going to be spending his, I think he's out of prison now, but he's got some house arrest. Looks like his house is a nice place to be arrested in. Wouldn't mind staying there forever. These are criminals, ladies and gentlemen, and we must expose them.
We want to go back to Marcia Kramer, who's in the newsroom, for a further update. Marcia?
Well, we have a number of updates. Number one, CNN is now reporting that there was a third explosion at the World Trade Center, probably an explosion from the ground that caused World Trade Center 1 to collapse on top of itself.
Building 7 collapsed. There was no plane hit it, no jet fuel, but it collapsed. It housed the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, all these other organizations.
Ashley Banfield is on the phone with us again from Lower Manhattan with more on what is still burning there. Ashley?
Brian, I can no longer hear you, but I just want to reiterate for you, if we can zoom in past me, that building right there, the brown building, the tall one, is number 7 World Trade Center. I've heard several reports from several different officers now that that is the building that is going to go down next. In fact, one officer told me they're just waiting for that to come down at this point, that there's no way it's going to be recovered and there's no way that they can stabilize it.
Harry Jennings, you were on the 8th floor, you work for the City Housing Department. Explain to me the moment of impact.
Well, me and Mr. Hesh, the Corporation Counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. And I turned to Hesh, I said, this is it. We're dead. We're not going to make it out of here. I took a fire extinguisher and I bust the window out. That's when this gentleman here heard my cries for help. This gentleman right here, and he kept saying, stand by, somebody's coming to get you. They couldn't get to us for an hour because they couldn't find us.
You thought that was it?
I thought watching it. And that's when I found out Building 7 came down. I was so surprised. And I'm saying to myself, why did that building come down? And I knew why it came down, because of the explosions. And it was no fuel oil tanks.
It's difficult to look outside the frame because we have been trained to look to the world that exists within the frame. They don't want to know what's behind the frame. The agenda, look at just history, the way it's been skewed. The truth is only serves when it serves the agenda of this collectivist, corporatist, socialist, one world approach cookie-cutter approach to everything.
Nonetheless, the decision ultimately was made to hand over the records to a responsible media outlet, in this case ABC News in New York, without compensation and/or promises or guarantees of any sort. Even though ABC News is under no obligation whatsoever to me, I do expect their reporting to help identify potential witnesses for my defense. For me, this is an absolute necessity, since the government has placed me in the untenable position whereby I do not have sufficient monies to undertake this extraordinarily expensive task. Consequently, I would ask the press and the media to put aside the titillation of the who's who's list, at least in part, and instead investigate the disturbing genesis, the confounding evolution, and the equally alarming continuation of this matter. I believe there is something very, very rotten at the core of my circumstance, and without money to hire my own investigators, I must rely upon your acumen and talent here in the press and the media to uncover the truth.
A woman believed to be the one convicted of running a high-end prostitution ring in Washington has been found dead in Florida, apparently from suicide. The body that police believe is Deborah Jean Palfrey was found in a shed near her mother's mobile home in Tarpon Springs, Florida, near Tampa. Police say there was a suicide note, but are not releasing what it said. Palfrey was convicted last month by a federal jury of running a prostitution service catering to Washington's political elite.
So what we all have to understand is that things are not as they appear to be. You have an organization such as the United Nations, the Council on Foreign Relations, influencing our government. These corporate criminals that are forcing insurance on us, these authoritarian measures, taking away our liberty, our freedom, ignoring our debt, just going wild on the government credit card, just going crazy. Did you ever once think that maybe they're doing it intentionally? You know, that UN's been talking about it for years, that they need a world currency, and they outwardly are discussing destroying the dollar. Debt ceiling has to be raised in less than 4 weeks. No one's talking about that, are they? Make a New Year's resolution, ladies and gentlemen, to research the things that I talk about, to find your own truth. There is only one truth. Seek and you'll find it. Happy New Year.